Marriage. It's the ultimate commitment, a sacred bond. At least, that's the marketing. We've compiled 101 stories where the reason for saying "I do" was less about forever and more about a dental plan, a TikTok challenge, or just pure, uncut pettiness. This isn't a celebration of love, it's an autopsy of terrible decisions. 1. A psychic swore her soulmate would be the next man in a red shirt. Destiny turned out to be a Target clerk on a smoke break, and she sprint proposed a week later. The romance flatlined when real bills showed up and the visions did not. It lasted 19 days, shorter than a return window. 2. For the dental plan. Let's be honest, this is a classic. After years of neglecting his teeth, Mark saw his girlfriend's corporate insurance and saw a future of free veneers. He proposed, got a Hollywood smile worth thousands for a $10 copay, and then filed for divorce. The marriage was over in 8 months. His perfect porcelain smile, however, is still going strong. 3. To avoid an awkward breakup. After 6 months of dating, David realized it wasn't working. But confrontation? Terrifying. So instead of breaking up, he proposed. She said yes. They figured it would magically fix things. This masterclass in conflict avoidance lasted a full year, ending not with a lawyer, but with one of them just leaving a note on the fridge. 4. He genuinely believed her sandwich-making skills were a sign of a perfect wife. Walter ate a turkey club made by Melissa that was, in his words, structurally perfect. He proposed that very evening. The marriage crumbled the first time he asked for another one, and she replied, "Make it yourself." So how long did it last? About 2.5 sandwiches. 5. 2 people named Jordan Miller married for the sheer chaotic joke of it. The IRS, DMV, and every credit bureau in the country promptly fused their lives into one bureaucratic nightmare. The union officially dissolved when a collections agency came after the wrong Jordan for the other's massive student loan debt. 6. To win an argument with her mom. During a heated phone call, Amanda's mother said, "You'll never find anyone to marry you." As a pure act of defiance, Amanda went to a bar, found the first guy who said yes, and married him at the courthouse the next day. She won the argument but lost the next 4 months of her life to the world's most awkward living situation. 7. For a performance art piece. 2 art school students, Sky and Jasper, decided their final project would be a filmed marriage and subsequent divorce, exploring the transient nature of modern commitment. They got an A on the project. The marriage, however, became painfully real when they had to actually divide their assets. All 2 posters and a used futon. 8. Because their video game characters were married. After teaming up for years in an online RPG, Kevin and Tina decided to make their virtual union a reality, despite living 2,000 miles apart. It turns out that a person's real-life personality can be very different from their level 90 paladin alter ego. The marriage was deleted faster than a corrupted save file. 9. It happened on day 3 of a cross-country road trip. Fueled by gas station coffee and terrible judgment, Mike and Sarah got married in a Vegas chapel by a sweaty Elvis impersonator. The romance survived all the way to the Arizona border, where they had their first real argument over the radio station. The annulment papers were filed from a motel in Flagstaff. 10. 2 rival real estate agents married to get access to each other's exclusive client lists. It was a cold-blooded corporate merger disguised as a romance. The partnership imploded when one of them sold the other's dream house out from under them to a high-commission client, proving that in real estate, love is always in escrow. 11. To win a bar trivia night. The final tiebreaker question was, who is brave enough to get married right now? A guy and his trivia partner, fueled by cheap beer and a competitive spirit, ran to the 24-hour chapel next door. They won the $50 bar tab. The marriage was annulled before they were even sober. 12. Because she was great at assembling IKEA furniture. A man watched his girlfriend build a Billy bookcase with no leftover screws and saw his future. He proposed on the spot. This union built on Swedish engineering lasted until their first attempt at a Pax wardrobe, which ended in tears and a thrown Allen key. 13. To avoid telling his parents he was gay. a classic beard marriage. He married his best female friend to keep up appearances at family holidays. This 1950s-style solution worked for 2 whole years until his roommate, Jeff, accidentally called him babe in front of his mom at Thanksgiving. 14. They were the last 2 single people in their friend group. They weren't in love. They were just tired of being the 3rd, 5th, and 7th wheel. So they married each other out of sheer social exhaustion. This pact of convenience lasted until one of them actually met someone they liked at a wedding they attended together. 15. To one-up a sibling. After his younger sister had a massive storybook wedding, a guy felt the pressure. So he eloped with a woman he'd been dating for 6 weeks just to steal the family spotlight. The marriage lasted exactly until his sister announced she was pregnant, making his stunt yesterday's news. 16. It was part of a viral TikTok challenge. The Marry a Stranger for 24 Hours challenge was, predictably, a terrible idea. 2 aspiring influencers did it for the views. They got 1 million hits and a mountain of legal paperwork. Their internet fame outlasted the marriage by about 6 months. 17. Because their dogs were best friends. 2 neighbors saw how much their golden retrievers loved each other and figured, why not make it official? They got married so the dogs could legally be siblings. The romance ended when one dog chewed up the other's favorite squeaky toy, sparking an irreconcilable human argument. 18. He mistook a joke for a proposal. During a trip to Italy, his girlfriend jokingly said, "This is so romantic, you should marry me." He didn't catch the sarcasm, got down on one knee with a breadstick, and she was too embarrassed to say no. The marriage was officially over by the time their flight landed back in Ohio. 19. To get their pet on a better health insurance plan. A woman's prize-winning bulldog needed a complex surgery, but her insurance was terrible. Her friend's corporate plan, however, offered an elite +1 pet policy. They got married, the dog got the surgery, and the union was dissolved once the final vet bill was paid. 20. Because he fixed her Wi-Fi. After her internet was out for 3 days, a guy from her apartment building got it working in 5 minutes. She was so overcome with gratitude and relief, she thought it was true love. This tech support romance lasted until the first time the internet went out again, and he had no idea how to fix it. 21. To get the inheritance. A guy's eccentric grandfather stipulated in his will that he had to be married and settled by age 30 to inherit a classic car collection. He married a bartender 2 days before the deadline. He got the cars, but the marriage was over faster than a joyride in a vintage Mustang. 22. Their apocalypse survival plans aligned perfectly. 2 doomsday preppers met online and bonded over their shared belief in the coming zombie outbreak. They married to consolidate their bunkers and supplies. The partnership ended when they had a fundamental disagreement about the superiority of canned chili versus MREs. 23. To get out of a speeding ticket. When pulled over, a guy spontaneously told the officer they were rushing to the courthouse to get married. The cop, feeling generous, let them go with a warning. Feeling trapped in the lie, they actually went through with it. The marriage lasted 1 very awkward weekend. 24. They were LARPers who got married in character. In the fantasy realm of Everwood, their elven characters were soulmates. They decided to make it official in the real world. Turns out, it's a lot less romantic when one of you still has to go to your accounting job on Monday morning dressed as a wood elf. 25. Because she looked like his celebrity crush. He was completely obsessed with a specific actress and met a woman who was a dead ringer for her. He rushed into marriage, essentially trying to date a fantasy. The illusion shattered the first time he called her by the celebrity's name by mistake. 26. For the free food samples at Costco. They noticed that on weekends, vendors were more generous with samples for what looked like happy couples. So they got courthouse married for the sole purpose of maximizing their free snacks. This culinary quest ended when they were banned for arguing too loudly over the last mini quiche. 27. A professional daredevil married his biggest fan. He thought it was a rock and roll move. She thought she was marrying a legend. The marriage lasted until the first time he broke his leg trying to jump a kiddie pool on a motorized scooter, and she realized he wasn't cool, just an idiot with bad insurance. 28. He was trying to prove a philosophical point. An insufferable philosophy major married a classmate to demonstrate that marriage was merely a social construct devoid of inherent meaning. His wife demonstrated her own philosophical point by taking half his stuff in the divorce 6 months later. 29. To get a promotion at work. An ambitious junior executive realized the fastest way up the ladder was to marry the CEO's painfully awkward and nerdy son. The plan worked beautifully. He got the vice president title, a corner office, and an immediate, brutally efficient divorce, leaving a very confused nerd in his wake. 30. To cure his chronic hiccups. An old wives' tale says a sudden shock can work. So, to test the theory, he staged a joke proposal to his best friend. She unexpectedly said yes, and the shock was so profound his hiccups actually stopped. The marriage, however, didn't have the same staying power. 31. To prove a point in an online argument. After debating with a stranger on Reddit that marriage is just a piece of paper, a guy married his roommate to prove it had no real-world impact. The argument was lost spectacularly when his piece of paper entitled his roommate to half his savings in the divorce. 32. For authentic social media content. A food influencer, obsessed with the farm-to-table aesthetic, married a rugged, handsome farmer for the content. She got her idyllic barn photo shoots and posts about real country living. The aesthetic partnership soured the first time she was expected to wake up at 4 a.m. to actually do farm work. 33. For the plot of his unpublished novel. A struggling writer married a barista because he thought the experience would give him the raw, emotional material he needed for his masterpiece. He never wrote the book, but he did get a compelling first chapter for his divorce proceedings. 34. To spite her parents with the most unsuitable person imaginable. To rebel against her conservative family, a college student married a 50-year-old medieval fair enthusiast who spoke exclusively in character as Bartholomew the Brave. The shock value was immense. The marriage lasted until the first time he tried to pay their rent with fake gold doubloons. 35. They were the only two people at a party who got each other's obscure movie references. After bonding over a shared love for 1970s sci-fi B-movies, they mistook their niche hobby for true love. Their shared universe collapsed during their first real-life crisis, where quoting a movie about killer robots turned out to be unhelpful advice. 36. Because he killed a spider for her. She had an extreme fear of spiders. He bravely killed a tiny one in her kitchen. In a wave of misplaced heroism and gratitude, she agreed to marry him. This fairy tale romance built on pest control ended the first time a much larger spider appeared, and he screamed louder than she did. 37. So they could finally change their relationship status on Facebook. After years of being single, two friends were pathologically obsessed with appearing successful online. They married each other in a cold, calculated move purely to post the photos and update their profiles. The marriage was annulled after they got enough likes to satisfy their validation quota. 38. They discovered a supposed legal loophole to erase student debt. Their plan was to get married and divorced within a specific state where, they believed, the process would nullify certain private loans. The scheme backfired spectacularly when the state closed that loophole a week before their divorce was finalized, leaving them legally married and still broke. 39. Because he had the same name as her celebrity crush. She was obsessed with a famous actor and met a regular accountant with the exact same name. She convinced herself it was a sign and married him. The fantasy died the first time she had to help him do his taxes, realizing he was far less leading man and far more tax-deductible. 40. They were Civil War reenactors who took their roles way too seriously. After courting for months in character as a Union soldier and a Southern belle, they decided to wed in a historically accurate ceremony. Their 19th century fantasy couldn't survive a 21st century argument about sharing the Wi-Fi password. 41. To break a world record. Their goal was to achieve the Guinness World Record for the shortest marriage. They signed the papers and filed for annulment 58 minutes later. They didn't get the record, but they did get a very confusing legal bill and a lifetime of explaining themselves. 42. He married her for her grandmother's secret chili recipe. He tasted it once at a potluck and was convinced it was the food of the gods. He married into the family just to get the recipe. The marriage soured instantly when he discovered the secret ingredient was a can of store-brand chili with extra cumin. 43. Because their parents were best friends and thought it was a great idea. They were pushed into it their whole lives. Finally, to get their families to just shut up, they went through with it. This arranged marriage of convenience lasted until their first vacation together, where they realized they couldn't stand each other without their parents as buffers. 44. A landlord married his tenant to legally get her out of a rent-controlled apartment. It was a bizarre, convoluted scheme where he thought marrying her, then divorcing her, would nullify the original lease. The judge in divorce court, however, had a very different interpretation of landlord-tenant law. 45. To form a political party. Two activists believed that being a legally married couple would give their new two-person political movement more legitimacy. They got married to found the United Front of Two People. The party and the marriage disbanded after their first disagreement over their official platform on recycling. 46. Because a magic 8-ball told him to. Unsure of what to do with his life, a guy asked an 8-ball if he should marry his girlfriend. It is decidedly so, it said. He took that as a binding contract from the universe. The magic ran out the first time they had to make a real decision without a novelty toy. 47. They were rival street performers who decided to merge their acts. A human statue and a mime thought getting married and creating a duo act would double their earnings. Instead, their artistic differences, he wanted more stillness, she wanted more invisible boxes, led to a very public and very silent breakup. 48. To get a key to the exclusive Gramercy Park in Manhattan. Only residents of the surrounding buildings get a key. A woman married a man who lived in one of those buildings purely for park access. She spent one glorious summer reading on a bench before he changed the locks on both the apartment and their marriage. 49. She was an immigrant who misunderstood the meaning of "let's get tacos." Her English was still developing, and when her American boyfriend casually said, "We should totally get married," she thought it was a serious proposal. He was too awkward to correct her. The misunderstanding was cleared up about 3 weeks into the actual marriage. 50. He did it to use the carpool lane. That's it. He and a coworker calculated that a courthouse marriage was cheaper than the combined gas and time they'd waste in traffic over a year. This commuter marriage hit a dead end when one of them got a job working from home, rendering the entire scheme obsolete. 51. A guy was so terrified of public speaking, he married his presentation partner in college just to avoid giving the final project speech alone. They got an A on the sociological impact of modern unions, but their own union was dissolved the day after graduation. The fear of public speaking, it turns out, is a terrible foundation for a lifelong commitment. 52. They were the only two employees who survived a brutal round of corporate layoffs. Bonding over their shared trauma and survivor's guilt, they mistook their relief for romance and got married. This us-against-the-world mentality lasted until the company offered one of them a promotion, turning their solidarity into a very awkward rivalry. 53. An aspiring actor needed a believable crying scene for an audition tape. He staged a fake proposal to his girlfriend, planning to have her reject him on camera for the raw emotion. The only problem? She enthusiastically said yes. Trapped in his own method acting, the marriage lasted for 3 agonizing months until he finally confessed. He didn't get the part. 54. To settle a drunken argument over who was more spontaneous, 2 friends ran out of a bar and got married at the nearest chapel. They woke up the next morning as victors of a pointless debate and co-owners of a legally binding contract. The spontaneity officially died when they had to schedule a meeting to discuss annulment paperwork. 55. His entire identity was being a punk rock rebel. To prove how much he despised conformity, he decided to do the most conformist thing possible, get married, but ironically. He married a librarian in a ceremony where they exchanged safety pins instead of rings. The irony was lost when they had to file joint taxes. 56. 2 birdwatchers spotted an incredibly rare ivory-billed woodpecker together, a bird thought to be extinct. Believing it was a sign from the universe, they married a week later. Their shared passion ended when they began arguing over the correct bird call for a common sparrow, revealing a fundamental incompatibility that not even a miracle bird could fix. 57. After binge-watching an entire historical drama in one weekend, a couple got so swept up in the romance of the era that they decided to have a whirlwind, old-fashioned courtship and marriage. The fantasy lasted until they realized that 18th century romance didn't prepare them for 21st century arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash. 58. A guy married his landlord's daughter to get his leaky faucet fixed. After months of unanswered maintenance requests, he took the most extreme measure possible. He got the faucet fixed the day after the wedding. The marriage started dripping with regret almost immediately after. 59. They were convinced they were reincarnated lovers from a past life. After a session with a hypnotist, two strangers believed they had been a tragic couple in ancient Rome. They married to finally give their story a happy ending. The relationship ended when one of them had a new hypnosis session and discovered they were actually reincarnated rivals from ancient Egypt. 60. A man married his next-door neighbor so he could legally use her garbage can. His was always overflowing, and city ordinances were strict. It was a marriage of convenience for waste management. This trashy union was thrown out after a screaming match over him not breaking down his Amazon boxes. 61. A woman married a man solely because he remembered her ridiculously complicated coffee order every single time. She saw this feat of memory as the ultimate sign of a devoted partner. The grounds for divorce? He never once remembered their anniversary. 62. It was a social experiment for a YouTube channel. Can two strangers fall in love and stay married for 30 days? Was the title. They documented every awkward moment for views. The experiment concluded on day 30 with a live-streamed mutual agreement that no, they could not. The video got 2 million views. The marriage got an annulment. 63. To get revenge on a wedding photographer. After being jilted at the altar, a woman hired the same photographer for a new wedding, this time marrying a random guy she paid for the day. Her only goal was to leave a scathing 1-star review using verified customer photos. The review was epic. The marriage was over by sunset. 64. Two conspiracy theorists got married because they were the only people who believed each other's outlandish theories about lizard people running the government. Their bond of mutual delusion fractured when one of them started believing the Earth was flat, a theory the other considered just plain ridiculous. 65. A man who hated making decisions married a woman who was pathologically decisive. He thought he'd never have to choose a restaurant or a movie again. The arrangement worked perfectly until she decided, on his behalf, that he would be much happier if they got a divorce. 66. He was a kleptomaniac who married a security guard, thinking it would cure him through exposure therapy. It didn't. The marriage ended abruptly during a shopping trip to the mall, which also happened to be her place of work. The irony was not lost on the arresting officers. 67. To create the ultimate band. Two musicians, a guitarist and a drummer, were convinced that the only thing holding them back from rock stardom was a deep, authentic connection. So they got married for the sake of their art. Their band, and their marriage, broke up over creative differences after their first and only gig. 68. After a near-death experience choking on a pretzel, a woman vowed to live life to the fullest. Her first act of radical spontaneity was marrying the paramedic who saved her. The adrenaline-fueled romance lasted until the hospital bills arrived, bringing a sobering dose of reality. 69. They were both professional line sitters, people paid to hold spots for things like new iPhones. After spending 72 hours together waiting for a sneaker release, they figured they could survive anything. They got married in the line. They were wrong. Their first argument as a married couple was over who had to wait in line at the DMV. 70. A man proposed as a grand, romantic gesture to stop his girlfriend from moving to another state for a new job. She accepted, turned down the job, and they got married. The resentment of her lost career opportunity, however, simmered just below the surface and finally boiled over, scalding the entire relationship. 71. A storm chaser proposed to a meteorologist in the eye of a Category 3 hurricane, believing it was the ultimate romantic gesture. She said yes, caught up in the atmospheric pressure and adrenaline. Their union, born in a vortex of wind and rain, disintegrated during their first calm weekend at home when they realized they had absolutely nothing to talk about. 72. Two people with crippling indecisiveness outsourced their life choices to a coin flip. Heads, we move to Oregon. Tails, we stay. One day, the coin decreed they should get hitched. So they did. This partnership, governed by chance, was terminated after a series of coin flips led to them painting their living room 3 different colors in 1 week. 73. An escape room enthusiast, obsessed with puzzles, saw marriage as the ultimate team challenge. He found a partner who shared his passion, and they wed, planning a life of solving riddles together. The final puzzle they couldn't crack was how to share a bathroom. The exit key to that union was a divorce lawyer. 74. A food blogger married a chef with a Michelin star, anticipating a lifetime of culinary perfection. The fantasy immediately soured. He was a tyrannical perfectionist in the kitchen, critiquing her every meal, including the way she made toast. The culinary partnership was officially over after a brutal argument over the proper way to season scrambled eggs. 75. To avoid being deported, an international student entered a contractual arrangement with an American classmate for a green card. The business deal proceeded smoothly for 2 years. The partnership was dissolved the day after his permanent residency was approved, with a handshake and a final wire transfer. 76. After discovering they were distant cousins through a DNA test, like fourth cousins twice removed, a couple thought it was a quirky, romantic twist of fate. They embraced their shared ancestry and tied the knot. The novelty wore off at the first family reunion, which became an inescapable vortex of awkward questions and genealogical charts. 77. He was a minimalist who owned exactly 100 things. She was a hoarder whose apartment was a fire hazard. They fell in love, believing their opposite natures would balance each other out. This experiment in domestic polarity ended when he tried to declutter her prized collection of antique thimbles. 78. To win a reality TV show. The show's premise was simple. The last couple standing after a series of brutal challenges wins $1 million. They were actors, hired to be the fake couple, but they outlasted everyone. They won the prize money, split it down the middle, and annulled the whole thing before the reunion special even aired. 79. A man wanted to prove to his ex-girlfriend that he was capable of commitment. As an act of misguided theatrical desperation, he married the first woman who agreed. He sent the wedding photos to his ex. She replied with one word: yikes. His grand gesture of stability crumbled within weeks. 80. Two true crime podcast fanatics bonded over their shared obsession with cold cases. They got married, thinking it would be a lifetime of analyzing clues together. The relationship met its demise when one of them started getting genuinely terrified that the other was researching a little too enthusiastically for a hypothetical perfect crime. 81. It was the only way to get his prized poodle into a dog show. The exclusive kennel club had a members and spouses only entry rule. So he married his dog walker. They won Best in Show. The union, however, didn't even last long enough for the trophy to collect dust. 82. A Silicon Valley tech bro proposed with a legally binding love contract instead of a ring, complete with performance metrics and quarterly reviews. His partner, also in tech, signed it. This optimized partnership was terminated when one party failed to meet their emotional support quota for 2 consecutive quarters. 83. A do-it-yourselfer was determined to renovate an old house entirely on his own. He married an architect, thinking he was getting a free in-house consultant. Their foundation cracked when he ignored her professional advice and knocked down a load-bearing wall both literally in the house and metaphorically in their relationship. 84. After a single amazing karaoke duet of Islands in the Stream, 2 strangers were convinced they had found their soulmate. The harmony was undeniable. They eloped the next day. Their real-life duet was painfully out of tune, ending on a sour note during their first argument over who hogged the microphone. 85. They were rival magicians who married to steal each other's signature trick. Each thought they could uncover the other's secrets through the intimacy of marriage. It became a 6-month Cold War of hidden cameras and snooping. The grand illusion ended when they simultaneously served each other with divorce papers they had made appear out of thin air. 86. A medieval reenactor would only marry a woman who could defeat him in a sword fight. He finally met his match in a blacksmith who was also a fencing champion. Their union, forged in mock combat, ended in a real-world battle over their joint checking account. 87. To combine their massive comic book collections. Two collectors realized that together they would own a near-complete run of every major superhero title. It was a merger of assets, not hearts. The alliance shattered when one of them discovered the other had bent the corner of a mint-condition Action Comics #1. 88. An urban explorer married a security guard for the sole purpose of getting access keys to abandoned subway tunnels and rooftops. For a few months, it was a thrilling adventure. The expedition came to a sudden halt when she was arrested for trespassing at his own place of work. 89. They were rival food truck owners. One sold tacos, the other grilled cheese. To end their bitter turf war, they decided to merge their businesses and their lives, creating a taco melt fusion truck. The business boomed, but the romance went up in smoke after a fight over the price of jalapenos. 90. He did it to fulfill a deathbed promise to his grandmother. She had always wanted to see him married. So he hired an actress, staged a wedding in the hospital room, and his grandmother passed away happy. The actress's contract expired an hour after the funeral. 91. Two professional stunt performers decided to make their wedding the ultimate spectacle, exchanging vows while literally on fire and jumping into a pool. Their belief was that if they could survive that, they could survive anything. This theory was disproven 6 months later when a real-life, non-scripted argument over credit card debt proved far more dangerous than any stunt. 92. In a bizarre attempt to end their professional rivalry, the world's #1 and #2 competitive eaters got married. They saw it as the ultimate merger, creating a dynasty of digestion. This power couple split after a vicious argument during a Nathan's hot dog eating contest, when one accused the other of using a suboptimal bun dunking technique. 93. To invoke spousal privilege. A man was about to testify against his partner in a minor criminal case. To legally prevent him from taking the stand, she proposed. He accepted. The charges were dropped due to a lack of witnesses, but she was now legally bound to the one person she couldn't afford to make an enemy of. Their legal shield became a personal prison. 94. A flash mob proposal in a crowded mall went horribly wrong. The intended girlfriend was mortified and walked away, but a random bystander, caught up in the music and romance, shouted, "I'll marry you." In a moment of sheer panic and public pressure, he agreed. The entire union lasted just long enough for the YouTube video of the event to go viral. 95. A man was obsessed with her fiery red hair, comparing it to everything from autumn leaves to a sunset. He proposed after just a month, completely smitten. This deeply profound connection ended the afternoon she came home from the salon as a brunette. He claimed it was false advertising and filed for divorce the very next day. 96. They were amateur ghost hunters who fell in love during a paranormal investigation of an old asylum. Their bond was forged over flickering flashlights and mysterious EVPs. The supernatural partnership dematerialized after they bought a genuinely haunted house and one of them realized they were, in fact, absolutely terrified of actual ghosts. 97. Two best friends made a pact. If they were both still single at 40, they'd marry each other to avoid dying alone. When the deadline hit, they honored the deal with a clinical trip to the courthouse. This pragmatic arrangement was nullified 18 months later when one of them actually fell in love, forcing the world's most awkward divorce conversation between friends. 98. His phone's autocorrect turned a text that was supposed to say, "We should get burgers," into "We should get married." Mortified and too cowardly to admit the mistake, he just went with it when she excitedly replied yes. This technological blunder of a marriage survived until their first big argument, when he finally confessed the truth. Their connection was permanently lost. 99. They were adult Disney fanatics. Their entire courtship was a nauseating montage of matching Mickey ears and Disney-themed dates. They tied the knot in front of Cinderella's castle. The Magic Kingdom crumbled during a disastrous family trip, ruined by meltdowns, massive crowds, and the crushing realization that their shared hobby was not a personality. 100. A hyper-organized couple had a shared life goals spreadsheet. Getting married was item number 99 on their list of 100 things to do together. They did it with robotic efficiency, checking it off between run a marathon and learn pottery. Their partnership was amicably dissolved shortly after, having achieved their final goal: mutually optimize separate life paths. 101. Simply to have a wild story to tell. That was the entire reason. They wanted to be that couple, the one with the insane, impulsive tale of a random Vegas wedding. Well, congratulations, you got your story. And for that, you have officially earned the top spot on this list. Their quest for an anecdote lasted 19 days. So, that's our list. But I guarantee it's not complete. Now it's your turn. I want you to go down to the comments and expose the single dumbest, most absurd reason for a marriage you've ever heard of in real life. Don't be shy. Put them on blast. Make our list look like child's play. If you enjoy proof that common sense is a superpower, smash the like button and subscribe. We're not done yet.